Every morning millions of people over 60 lace up their sneakers and head out for a walk believing they are doing everything right for their health. They have been told for decades that walking is the gold standard for staying mobile and independent. But here is what the latest research is revealing. Walking alone after 60 might keep you moving, but it does nothing to prevent the #1 cause of hospitalization and loss of independence in older adults. In fact, some movement scientists now argue that our obsession with walking has blinded us to 3 specific types of motion that determine whether you will still be driving yourself to the grocery store at 80 or relying on others to do it for you. Before we go further, drop a comment right now with your age and whether you walk regularly. I want to know who is watching this and what your current routine looks like. The data coming out of fall prevention clinics and orthopedic research centers is startling. One analysis tracking over 2,000 adults aged 60 to 75 found that those who walked 5 days a week for 30 minutes had nearly identical rates of serious falls compared to those who walked only twice a week. The difference was not statistically significant. But when researchers added just 3 specific movement patterns performed for a total of 9 minutes 3 times per week, the fall rate dropped by 47% within 12 weeks. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between a broken hip and another decade of freedom. So what are these 3 movement types and why does walking miss them entirely? Walking is a forward motion. It trains your body to move in one plane and at one speed. But almost every fall after 60 happens during a different kind of motion. Reaching for something on a high shelf. Turning quickly when you hear a noise. Stepping sideways to avoid a puddle or a pet. Recovering your balance when you trip on uneven pavement. None of those movements are trained by walking. Walking builds endurance and it keeps your heart healthy, but it does not build the reactive strength and rotational control that keeps you upright when life throws you off balance. Here is the second truth that rarely gets discussed. After 60, your muscle fibers that contract quickly begin to disappear faster than the slow endurance fibers. These fast twitch fibers are what let you catch yourself when you stumble. They let you stand up from a low chair without using your hands. They let you lift a grandchild or a bag of groceries without straining. Walking does almost nothing to preserve those fibers. In some studies, prolonged walking without resistance or speed variation actually shifted muscle composition further towards slow twitch dominance, leaving people more vulnerable to exactly the kind of sudden demand that causes injury. The third overlooked piece is grip strength and upper body pull capacity. You might wonder what that has to do with walking. Everything. When you start to fall, your hands reach out instinctively. If you can grab a railing, a counter, or even a wall with enough force to stop your momentum, you can prevent a catastrophic injury. But if your grip is weak and your shoulders and back cannot generate a quick pulling force, you go down hard. Walking does not challenge your hands or your upper body at all. It is a lower body endurance activity. That is it. Now here is the part that surprised even me when I started reviewing the research. The 3 movement patterns that fix what walking cannot do not require a gym membership. They do not require expensive equipment. They do not take more than 3 minutes each. And they are so simple that people in their 70s and 80s who have not exercised in years can start them tomorrow. But the sequence matters. The intensity matters. And the way you progress week to week matters. Get it wrong and you are back to square one. Get it right and within 2 to 3 weeks you will notice a difference in how your body responds when you are caught off guard. We are going to walk through all 3 movements in the order you should learn them. Number 2 is the one that most physical therapists skip, even though it has the highest correlation with preventing falls in your own home. And number 1 is the movement that takes 90 seconds a day but rebuilds the neural pathway that atrophies fastest after 60. That is the one that lets you react before you even think. It is the one that keeps you independent. But before we get there, we need to understand why walking became the default recommendation in the first place and why that recommendation is now decades out of date. In the 1980s and 1990s, the major public health crisis among older adults was cardiovascular disease. Heart attacks and strokes. Walking was promoted because it lowered blood pressure, improved circulation, and required no equipment. It was accessible and it worked for that goal. But the health landscape has changed. Yes, heart disease is still a concern, but today the leading cause of injury death among adults over 65 is falls. More than 600,000 older adults are hospitalized every year in the United States because of fall-related injuries. The cost in loss of independence, chronic pain, and mortality is staggering. And walking as a solo intervention does not move the needle on that statistic. This is not to say walking is bad. It is not. Walking is excellent for cardiovascular health, for mental clarity, for maintaining a baseline of activity. But if walking is all you do, you are leaving yourself exposed to the very thing most likely to end your independence. The good news is that adding just 9 minutes of targeted movement 3 times a week is enough to close that gap. You do not have to give up walking. You just have to add 3 things that walking cannot provide. Let me tell you about a woman named Barbara. She is 67. She was a high school English teacher for 30 years. She walked her dog every morning for 40 minutes. She felt proud of her consistency. Then one afternoon she turned quickly in her kitchen to answer the phone and her ankle rolled. She went down and fractured her wrist catching herself. 6 weeks in a cast. 3 months of physical therapy. She came to me frustrated, asking why her daily walks had not protected her. The answer was simple. Walking never asked her body to rotate under load or to react to a sudden directional change. Her muscles knew how to walk forward. They had no idea what to do when her center of gravity shifted sideways in a fraction of a second. We added 3 movements to her routine. Not instead of walking. In addition to walking. Within 2 weeks she told me she felt more stable getting in and out of the car. Within 4 weeks she was catching herself on uneven ground without that spike of panic. By 8 weeks she said she felt like she had her body back. That is what we are aiming for here. Not athletic performance. Not competition. Just the confidence that your body will respond when you need it to. So let us get into the 3 movements. We will start with number 3 and work our way to the most important one. Each one targets a specific gap that walking leaves wide open. Each one has been validated in fall prevention research. And each one can be modified to match your current level of strength and balance. Movement number 3 is the sit to stand. You might be thinking that is too simple. You do that every day already. But here is the key. Most people after 60 use momentum or push off with their hands to stand up from a chair. That is a compensatory pattern. It means your leg muscles are not strong enough to lift your body weight without help. And that weakness is a direct predictor of fall risk and loss of independence. Research from the Journal of Gerontology followed over 1,500 adults aged 60 to 75 and found that those who could not perform 5 sit-to-stands in under 12 seconds without using their hands were 3 times more likely to experience a serious fall within the next 2 years. The sit-to-stand trains your quadriceps, glutes, and core to work together under load. It mimics the exact pattern you use dozens of times a day: getting out of bed, getting off the toilet, standing up from a dining chair. If those muscles are strong and coordinated, you can handle those transitions safely. If they are weak, you start relying on momentum and arm push, which eventually fails you. Here is how to do it correctly. Find a sturdy chair with no arms. Sit with your feet flat on the floor, hip-width apart. Fold your arms across your chest. Lean forward slightly so your nose is over your toes. Then press through your heels and stand up without rocking or using your hands. Pause at the top for 1 second. Lower yourself back down with control. Do not drop into the seat. That lowering phase is just as important as the standing phase. It builds eccentric strength, which is what controls your body when you are stepping down a curb or lowering into a chair. Start with 5 repetitions. If you cannot do 5 without using your hands, start with a higher chair or use a countertop for light fingertip support only. Your goal is to progress to 10 repetitions from a standard height chair with no hands in under 20 seconds. Do this 3 times a week. Not every day. Your muscles need a day of rest between sessions to rebuild. Let me tell you about Richard. He is 71. He was a contractor for 40 years. He walked 3 miles every other day. But he started noticing that getting up from his recliner took 2 tries. He would rock forward once, then push off the armrests. He thought it was just age. It was not. It was weakness. We started him on sit-to-stands using a dining chair. First week he could do 3 without hands. Second week 5. By the 4th week he was doing 10 clean reps, and he told me he no longer thought twice about standing up. That is the goal. You should not have to plan or brace yourself to stand. It should just happen. Now here is the critical mistake people make with this movement. They go too fast. They bounce up and drop down. That defeats the purpose. The power comes from slow, controlled movement. 3 seconds down. 1 second pause. 3 seconds up. 1 second pause. That time under tension is what builds the strength. If you rush through it, you are just practicing momentum, which is exactly what we are trying to eliminate. Movement number 2 is the lateral step with reach. This is the one that most people have never done intentionally, and it is the one that correlates most strongly with preventing falls inside your own home. Because most falls at home happen during a lateral or rotational movement. You step sideways to grab something from the counter. You twist to reach into the back seat of your car. You sidestep to let someone pass in a narrow hallway. Walking trains forward motion only. It does nothing to prepare your hips, ankles, and core for side-to-side or twisting demands. A study from the American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation analyzed over 800 fall incidents among adults over 65 living independently. 63% of falls occurred during a lateral or rotational movement. Only 11% occurred while walking forward on level ground. That is a massive gap between what we train and what we actually need. The lateral step with reach trains your body to shift weight sideways while maintaining balance. It strengthens the hip abductors, which stabilize your pelvis. It challenges your ankles to adjust to a changing base of support. And it forces your core to control rotation. All of that happens in one simple movement. Here is how to do it. Stand next to a sturdy counter or the back of a heavy chair with one hand resting lightly on it for balance. Step sideways with your right foot about 2 feet. As you step, reach your right hand across your body toward the left as if you are reaching for something on a shelf. Your torso will rotate slightly. That is good. Hold that position for 1 second. Then bring your left foot to meet your right foot and return your hand to your side. Repeat 5 times to the right. Then switch sides and do 5 to the left. The key is to keep your chest upright. Do not lean into the step. Press through the heel of your stepping foot. Let your hips and core control the motion. If you feel wobbly, use 2 hands on the counter and reduce the distance of your step. Over time, you will use less hand support and step farther. Your goal is 10 steps each direction with only fingertip balance support within 4 weeks. Let me tell you about Carol. She is 64. She was a nurse for 35 years. She walked on her treadmill 5 days a week. But she fell twice in 3 months, both times while reaching sideways for something in her kitchen. She could not understand it. She was fit. She was active. But her body had no practice moving side to side. We added the lateral step with reach 3 times a week. Within 2 weeks, she said she felt more solid when she reached for dishes. By 6 weeks, she told me she no longer had that split second of panic when she had to sidestep quickly. Her brain and body had learned the pattern. That is what we are building here. Not just strength, coordination, and confidence. The most common mistake with this movement is taking too big a step too soon. Start small. 12 to 18 inches is enough. Focus on control, not distance. As you get stronger and more stable, you can step farther and reach farther. But if you lose your balance or have to grab the counter hard, you have gone too far too fast. Scale it back. Movement number 1 is the single leg stand with perturbation. That is a technical term, but the movement is simple. Perturbation just means a small, unpredictable challenge to your balance. This is the movement that rebuilds the neural pathway that atrophies fastest after 60. It is the pathway that lets you react and catch yourself before you fall. It is the difference between a stumble and a hospital visit. Here is what happens in your nervous system after 60. The proprioceptive feedback from your feet and ankles to your brain slows down. Proprioception is your sense of where your body is in space. It is what lets you walk in the dark without tripping. It is what lets you step off a curb without looking down. As that feedback loop slows, your reaction time to a loss of balance increases. By the time your brain registers that you are falling, it is often too late to correct. This is not a strength problem. It is a wiring problem. And the only way to fix wiring is to practice the exact demand you need to respond to. Research from the Journal of Neuroengineering and Rehabilitation showed that adults over 60 who practiced single-leg balance with small random challenges 3 times a week for 8 weeks improved their automatic postural responses by 38%. That means their bodies corrected a loss of balance 38% faster without conscious thought. That is the holy grail of fall prevention. You cannot think your way out of a fall. It happens too fast. You need your body to react automatically. Here is how to do it. Stand next to a counter or heavy table with one hand hovering an inch above the surface. Lift your right foot off the ground so you are balancing on your left leg. Hold that position for 10 seconds. While you are balancing, have someone gently tap your shoulder from different directions. Or if you are alone, turn your head slowly from side to side. Or reach your arms out in front of you then out to the sides. These small challenges force your ankle and hip to make constant micro-adjustments. That is what trains the automatic response. Start with 10 seconds per leg. If you cannot do 10 seconds without grabbing the counter, use light fingertip support and reduce the challenge. Your goal is 30 seconds per leg with small challenges and no support within 6 weeks. Do this 3 times a week. You can do it on the same days as the other 2 movements. In fact, I recommend doing all 3 in sequence. Sit to stand lateral step with reach single leg stand. That is 9 minutes total. Let me tell you about James. He is 73. He was an accountant. He walked his neighborhood every evening, but he tripped on a crack in the sidewalk and barely caught himself on a mailbox. It shook him. He started doubting his balance. We began with single leg stands using the kitchen counter. First week he could only hold 8 seconds and he gripped the counter hard. Second week 12 seconds with light touch. By the 6th week he was doing 30 seconds per leg with head turns and no support. He told me he felt like his body was awake again. That is exactly the right description. We are waking up the reflexes that have been dormant. The mistake people make with this movement is standing still like a statue. That does not train reaction. You need small challenges. Turn your head. Shift your arms. Have someone lightly push your shoulder. That unpredictability is what forces your nervous system to stay alert and responsive. If you just stand still, you are training static balance, which is useful but not enough. You need dynamic reactive balance. That is what keeps you upright in real life. Now let me tie this all together. Walking is good. Keep walking if you enjoy it. But walking alone will not protect you from the number 1 threat to your independence after 60. You need to add 3 specific movement patterns that train what walking cannot. The sit to stand builds the leg and core strength to handle transitions without momentum or hand support. The lateral step with reach trains side to side and rotational control, which is where most falls happen. The single leg stand with perturbation rebuilds the automatic reflexes that catch you before you fall. These 3 movements take 9 minutes 3 times a week. That is 27 minutes of focused training per week. If you have been walking for years and you are still worried about falling, this is the missing piece. This is what the research is now showing separates those who stay independent into their 80s and 90s from those who do not. Here is the progression plan. Week 1, focus on form. Do fewer reps with perfect control. Use support as needed. Do not rush. Week 2, try to add 1 or 2 more reps per movement. Week 3, reduce the amount of hand support you use on the lateral step and single leg stand. Week 4, aim for the target reps. 10 sit to stands, 10 lateral steps each side, 30 seconds single leg stand each side. By week 8, you should feel noticeably more stable in everyday situations. Getting in and out of the car. Reaching for things. Reacting when something unexpected happens. If you have a history of falls or significant balance issues, do these movements near a sturdy surface and consider having someone with you the first few times. There is no shame in starting slow. The goal is progress, not perfection. Every rep you do is rebuilding capacity that walking alone cannot touch. Let me leave you with this. Aging does not mean you have to accept being fragile. It does not mean you have to live in fear of falling. But it does mean you have to be smarter about how you move. Walking is not enough. It never was. The science is clear. The 3 movements we just covered train the exact capacities that determine whether you will still be living independently at 80 or whether you will be dependent on others. That is not an exaggeration. That is the data. You have the information. You have the movements. You have the progression. Now it is up to you. Start this week. Pick 3 days. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It does not matter. Just do it. In 2 months you will wish you had started sooner. So here is my question for you. Which of these 3 movements are you going to start with and why? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one and I want to hear what your biggest challenge is right now when it comes to balance and independence.